Hi, Instagram. I am so excited because I have a special guest who's going to come on if I know how to work this thing. So say hello to me so I can see who's coming on. And I have a super special guest. Don't go. Somebody I'm so excited who's going to talk to us about her new book, which released 2 days ago. So there she is. Let me see. Okay. She's coming. You want to stay for this conversation? Hey, Elizabeth.
Hey, Dr. Shefali, I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, call me Shefali now. I don't call you Dr.
No,
Elizabeth. Go ahead. Okay,
no,
good.
you worked hard. You worked hard, girl.
What about you? You're a doctor too. I don't call
I
you
am.
doctor.
That's okay. That's okay. Thank
You
you,
see?
Shefali.
You see how you put yourself down? You see?
Oh, I'm getting better at it. I have to say, I've gotten better. People say, "What should I call you?" And my immediate reaction is Elizabeth. And then I say, Dr. Elizabeth. I'm
Oh,
working on it. I'm working
very
on it.
good. Very good. Well, I'm so proud of you and I'm so excited. Show us your new book. The Light at the Other Side of Divorce. I love that paper. I love the color. It's my favorite color, the Tiffany blue.
Mm,
And it's discovering the new you.
yes.
So all of you women out there, even if you're not getting a divorce, go get this book because it's really about welcoming yourself back, whether you are in a marriage or not. Right, Elizabeth?
That's right. And it has a very special foreword by Dr. Shefali, which I'm so grateful for. And yes, it's about coming home to yourself, as you talk about so much with your audience. It's about that moment where you have the choice between, do I focus on my ex and what they've done and our story and our history, or do I reclaim myself? Do I look at myself, do the internal work so that I can be authentically me in this beautiful, gorgeous next chapter?
Yes. And people think a divorce is against a traditional marital partner. No, we have to divorce all the toxic elements in our lives. Our
Yes.
mothers in our heads, the fathers in our heads, the step parents, the bully of the friend in teenagehood, culture. So this book is really very beautiful if you can look at it more than marriage and how to really enter your most powerful self. So, Elizabeth, tell us why you wrote this book.
Yes. So I wrote this book because when I got divorced about 10 years ago, I sat in my bed, opened my laptop. I had a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old, so I probably hadn't showered in days. And I typed in divorce recovery and crickets. I found nothing. And I didn't realize until recently, Shafali, that that sent me the message that I actually wasn't going to recover. Because if there was no information out there, how was I going to heal? So, because of my privilege of my education, I slowly pieced together a healing program for me with many mistakes along the way. And I created this book so that no one would ever have to do it again. And I actually wrote this healing package for going through any sort of loss and grief, and specifically divorce, for the person who's at the library, thinking, pushing their kids to that free story hour as I did and thinks my life is over. And if you could just see out of the corner of your eye, light at the other side of divorce, maybe that would make you question that your situation could be different than you're assuming culture is telling you and all your friends are telling you.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And Elizabeth, you work with people,
Yes.
women who are going through it. So if you're going through it right now in your relationship and you're confused, Elizabeth has this beautiful, soothing way of helping you reach the other side, either to stay with greater equanimity or to leave with greater courage. So Elizabeth is a professional and she helps people do this every day of her life. So Elizabeth, what do you feel is the core fear women have? Is it the children? Is it the finances? Is it all of it? Is it society? What will people say? To really like confront the truth that they are not flourishing in their marriage.
Yeah, Shafali, I think it really is this difficulty that women have of owning what they need, what they want, and what they desire. We have an amazing capacity to shove down feelings of discomfort or mismatch right? We think, oh, we're doing it for another person. I'll wait till my kids are out of college, or it's not so bad. How could there be I'm sure he's better than some of the other people that are out there, for example. This denying your truth, this denying your desire, this denying your needs, that I believe is what keeps people in relationships that aren't working for them. And culture doesn't help. It's not like we have a divorce party, right? We have a huge freaking party for a wedding where people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then you get divorced and people look at you, like, I'm so sorry. When I got divorced, I don't know if you did this, but people would say, I'm so sorry. I say, oh, no, say congratulations. This is a great thing. I was
Yeah.
brave.
When
Was
I got
strong.
divorced and they would be saying, I'm sorry, I'm like, who are you talking to? Like, I don't see a broken person. What are you sorry for? But it's
Exactly.
cultural indoctrination, stereotypes, and projection, right? They want to say congratulations, but they don't, they are so confused about this whole idea of divorce because there's
Yeah.
so much shame around it.
Absolutely. I mean, there's still such a stigma, even though 50% of first marriages end in divorce, 65% of second marriages, and 78% of third marriages end in divorce. And we're still having this unbelievable
I know. Do we
stigma.
go on a plane if there's 50% chance of failure?
Exactly.
Yes, I love this. Anna Laura events. Everybody, I'm doing a plug for Anna Laura. She's like, I do divorce parties.
Oh my
I
God,
love
that's
it.
amazing. We
Yes.
need to sync up. Yes, let's do it. Let's celebrate. And I love the idea, Anna Louise, if you have a divorce party, asking the person, what color balloons do you want? Because so many of the women I work with, they're like, I don't even know what color I like anymore. I've spent all this time negotiating for other people's needs. And so I love the idea of the party also because it requires you to think, what do I actually want?
Yeah, and you and I have talked about this so much that, this whole doom and gloom, you failed, it's a sin, is all coming from religion and this puritanical approach that we should be in a marriage in order to feel complete. And it's not true, everybody. Elizabeth and I are both divorced and we are rocking happy, okay? And liberated and free and loving and kind and taking care of our children and not broken women. We are like so powerful. We've healed, we've learned, we've grown, and we've understood that our greatest obligation is to our authentic self, not to the patriarchal idea of being in a marriage for the sake of being together.
Exactly. I was way more, I don't know about you, Shefali, but I was way more broken in my marriage than I was in my divorce. I'm freer than I've ever been. And my kids get to have a freer mom. They get to have a mom who's empowered and emboldened. And so many people, the second biggest fear is, am I going to screw up my kids? And I don't know how to explain to people, as the beautiful work that you teach, Shefali, like if you are a conscious parent, you can consciously co-parent through divorce. You can guide your kids through the process, and guess what they get to learn? Life isn't always perfect. I mean, my kids had to learn experiences like negotiating, telling their one parent how they felt, how to express what they needed to their sibling, not getting caught in triangulation at such a young age. And I think that's a friggin' gift, because I work with all these people who come to me after college and they're at their first job and their boss is kind of difficult and they don't know how to talk to them because they've had this kind of perfect puritanical upbringing and they haven't been given that kind of like grit to
Yeah.
manage.
Yeah, but let me tell you, without idolizing anyone, we should remember that a lot of broken people come from together homes, whatever they're called.
Yes.
So this is a misunderstanding. It's just like, I only have one child, the same thing. Oh, you only have one child, poor child. She's amazing, happy. So it's these mythologies that are not true. And the underlying factor is, does the child have a present parent? You
Yes.
don't, I'm sorry to say, you don't even need two. You just need one. And that's why I always say conscious parenting begins with one parent. The awakened family begins with one parent. So when we put pressure that, I can only divorce if I have a conscious partner, you'll never get divorced, because the reason you're divorcing is because you don't have a conscious partner. So, just do it. And as long as you are sure that you can
Exactly.
financially be stable and emotionally contain your child. Will your child be upset? Yes, because culture makes them feel bad. Will your child get angry? Yes, but they may have gotten angry anyway. You know, anything that happens after the divorce, we blame the divorce. But it's not true. It could have happened anyway. And the point is that you have to be authentic, and you cannot live your whole life. Now you try, you compromise, you therapize, you and I tried and tried and tried and tried. But then you get to a point of a decision where, okay, now am I compromising my sanity? And like you said, you were very broken. How can you be a mother when you're broken? You know?
Exactly. Exactly. So well said. And a lot of my clients say to me, they get so focused on the other person. The other person is not authentic parenting. How can I tell the kids that that's wrong? I always say, keep the focus on you. Keep your beautiful, authentic parenting going. And as you said, that's all the kid needs. The kids need one person who is hearing them, seeing them, and being present with them. And then what will happen is they will know what it feels like to not have that parent. So they'll know themselves. I don't if this happens in your work, but people are always saying to me, well, can I tell them what they're, why we're divorcing or what the other parent did? No, they will know. They will find out if you are raising them consciously, they will know what it feels like to be with an authentic being and an authentic body. Don't have to tell them anything.
I know. And we want to tell them because we're feeling so bad. So we want extra points. And
Yeah.
when I went one day in a moment of consciousness, I told my daughter, no matter what, I'm not going to say anything bad about your dad. And she said, thank you. But then every time I forgot and I would
Yeah.
say something negative, she's
She
like,
remind you.
I thought you told me you're not going to say anything. I'm like, oops, I did. So it's
Right.
our 10 because we're children. No, we're like little children at in the sand pit, and somebody took
100%.
your ex took extra sand and you want to fight. But now you have
Exactly.
a child there, and let me tell you, no matter this is my experience, no
Mm.
matter what the other person does, it's your child's parent. Your child will not go against the parent
Amen.
willingly, and they will resent you when you talk badly about the other one. No matter how
Absolutely.
right you are, you're like, hello, but he did this or she did this. Don't talk about the other one badly, because it's your child's parent, and it splits them up. And
Exactly.
I know it's not fair because we want to complain, but we can't complain. We have to think of the child. It really splits them up. They don't like it. They don't like it.
No, I'm so glad you're bringing this up. I talk about this in the book. We have a biological in our DNA system of attachment. The children are meant to be biologically attached to both parents. They see themselves as part of the other parent. So I say, don't talk smack about the other person. When you talk smack about the other person, they think, oh, I'm part of that person. Do they also think that about me? It makes them
Yeah.
deeply, right,
Yeah,
deeply
don't want.
unsafe and unsecure.
Yeah, imagine you don't want to have a parent who's so evil, so bad, because their genes are in you. You know that. So the kid doesn't feel good when you do that. So
No,
when you want to bitch and complain, you call your friends, and
exactly.
you so Elizabeth, let me just tell people what we're doing here. I've posted the link. My assistant has posted the link. Show us your book
Thank you.
again. We are celebrating this amazing book. I wrote the foreword. It's called Light at the Other Side, at the other end or other side.
Other side.
Light at the Other Side of Divorce. Buy it for your friends who are stuck in a marriage that they're not happy. They're grieving their past relationships. Buy it for anyone who's having relationship heartache. It's beautifully written. It's a new paradigm. And I'm so excited to support this amazing book because it'll help to change how we look at breakups and separations, and how to help our children.
Yeah.
How do we help our children survive this? And the key is not to bitch about the other one,
Right.
and the key is not to be unhappy and to go on and live your life. When your kid sees that you're happy, they get it. They're like, okay,
Yeah,
it's not my
exactly.
fault, and it's not their fault, so they don't want to feel the burden of that.
No, and I have a chapter in the book called Righteous Anger. You have the absolute right to feel so angry for your situation. If you get the book and work through the exercises, then you can allow yourself to process the feelings so you don't have to share it with your kid. Because you do have the feelings, and those are yours to own and are authentically your experience, but they're not your child's. It's so hard to remember. Sometimes my kids will say to me, Mom, it's not always about the divorce, you know? Like, they'll say that to me because I'll say, oh, is this related to how you're feeling about your dad? No. And so sometimes it's just about their life. Your experience of divorce is different than theirs. Heal yours with a book like mine, and then you can be clear so you can fully consciously parent your child through what they're going through with the divorce.
Elizabeth, you weren't ever childish. I've been childish. You've never been
I was
childish.
childish last week. I keep telling this story. So one of the things that I own in my marriage that I did was I would I don't know if this is familiar for people, but I would expect my ex-husband to show up for something, but I wouldn't tell him about it. So he wouldn't know, and then I'd get pissed. But of course, I never told him. So that's one of my patterns, one of my when I'm not in my conscious body. And we've been divorced for 10 years. Last week, my daughter got bat mitzvahed, and I didn't invite him to the dress rehearsal. I did it again. Like, I did it again. And I thought, okay, here I am. And I had to say to my girl, I'm sorry. I totally iced your dad out again. That's the thing I do. Had to apologize to him. I'm a child all the time, Shefali. I mean, I just own it, rupture and repair. But yes, we are children all the time.
I'm a child because I always want to look better. I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
aren't I better? Aren't I amazing? I'm doing all this all by myself. I'm better. I'm better. I'm better. And she doesn't give me one time I'm better. I've not even been better one time.
Not
So the
one
more she
time.
doesn't, I'm like begging, don't I get A++ and he gets only A? Nope. She won't give me A++ anytime.
Oh,
So I had to really learn to shut the F up and go,
oh,
stop begging her to give you the A++ grade.
yes.
In fact, the more I do it, he's getting A++.
100%. She's like, this is why you're actually failing, because you keep asking me. Haven't you learned that? I mean, I had to learn also, and I talk about this in the book, when they come home from a transition, I would be so excited to see them when they were coming from their father's house. And all they wanted was space. All they wanted was to be by themselves. And I looked like this sad puppy, who was like, what about me? Oh, and I'd ask them all these questions, and I had to really zip my lip. I mean, so much of this is about, really zipping, like what not to say. People think, what do I say to my kids about divorce? It's like, no, let's talk about what you don't say.
Yeah, there's not much to say. Actually, the more, if you keep on talking about it, they got it. And this
Yeah.
generation, they're like, obviously, you shouldn't have even gotten together. And I wouldn't make such a stupid choice if it was me. And I would be smarter. And I would be this way. And they've moved on. And we are like, you sure you're okay? Because we're so guilty. And we were raised in the old paradigm more than they are. And you and I are changing the paradigm now. How lucky for these next kids. But we didn't have people like you and me changing the paradigm, right?
No.
So we're full of guilt. And we think everything revolves around us anyway. And we're so ashamed. But they are the less you say, the better. And I used to always tell my daughter, we should process. And she was like, I hate to process. I don't want to process because it's all about our issues. They don't want to know our problems.
Exactly. Shefali, I tell this story in the book that when my ex-husband was having a baby with his second wife, right before the baby was coming, I'd ask my kids, as they would tell you, unskillfully, all the time. I mean, imagine having a mother as a therapist, right? How are you feeling? Do you want to switch the times? How are you, what do you want to do? Because they never really don't have a lot of memories of living with their dad. So baby's going to be living with your dad. And my 9-year-old turned to me and said, Mom, I'm fine with this. Are you okay with this? And I was like, no, I am not okay with this. Like, it was all my stuff. Like, it was all my stuff. It was me. I was upset that he was never there to help me raise the kids. And now he was going to have this baby. It was all my stuff.
Yeah, it's all our stuff. They move on. Now, is it a little bit hurtful to them because culture is a little close? Yes, but it's not as traumatic. We make it traumatic. Okay, and then let's talk about real ego battles. Like, I didn't have real ego battles. Sometimes only like a little bit, but people have real ego battles, and the kid sees prolonged battling. So I have a few tips, but what are your tips to help women, conscious women and men, to break that pattern and say, I won't do this? How do you help them to do that?
So I have a couple of strategies that I do. The first is, in my letting go of resentment chapter, is really getting clear on why you fell in love with this person. even if you don't, we all know you don't want to be with this person, but there was something on that first date, on that second date that drew you to a third date. And I suggest people write those things down. And then I suggest that you think about how your ex-partner is giving those things to your kids. So in my situation, I'm very organized, I'm very on top of things, and I make all the plans. My ex-husband is friggin' fun. Like, I'm not so fun. So when he took them to school, they would sing, they would skip, they would make up stories. That's something he's uniquely bringing to them. So I would always have a list of like his positive attributes that would help me get out of taking his inventory all the time or harping only on the negative. So that's one thing I would do. I would also remind myself that one finger pointing at someone else is three fingers pointing at myself. The shit that made me upset about him was the stuff I don't like about myself. I just had to take ownership over it. And I had to release him. I had to release, what I always wanted was an apology, for being unavailable. The truth is, until I let go of that, and thankfully using some of your work, Shefali, 3 months later, he came and apologized, and I didn't even care. I didn't even need it anymore. So I focused on letting go of my resentment in that way. Those are some of the things I do.
I know, it's so hard. We all want the apology and the, eternal, I'll pay you back. I mean, we have to let go of all that. That's all our emptiness and our need. We're so needy. But yeah, what I help women with also is this, cut out this tit for tat. It was never equal. Nobody's equal. We think we're equal, 50-50. No, like you said, each one is bringing unique things. And whatever you did in the relationship, because you're so amazing, you have to take ownership that you did all that shit. And now you can't be resentful, So I really learned in my patterns that don't do anything you're going to be resentful for later, because that resentment kills you, you're like, because you feel taken advantage of. All that inner child stuff comes up. And really grown up people take ownership of their giving, So I teach women, stop giving. Why are you giving if you're giving to get? You have to learn to give because you want to give. Because don't hold the other person accountable for not appreciating or saying sorry or not giving you back, because we're not equal. We're different people. So owning ourselves now in our relationships is so important. But what about when women are genuinely financially strapped? That's a big barrier.
That is a huge barrier. And I think so many women underestimate their worth in the marriage, and I think would take the other person's needs before their own, even financially. That very often relationships are ending and you do have a big financial discrepancy, and that's incredibly hard. I have a woman that I work with who, she had to go, her ex-husband was actually also financially abusive, which a lot of people experience, and she had to live in a women's shelter. But she would tell me that she was happier living in that women's shelter, being on her own, being able to make her own decisions, than she was in their McMansion in Beverly Hills. And so I also do believe that women can rise up. I mean, women have an amazing capacity to make money and make a living. Think about, for people who are going through or considering a divorce, how much more time you would have when you release that need to fix the other person or fix the marriage, right? Or live up to their expectations. By releasing that energy, unbelievable potential can come up.
And there will be a period of complete, utter unknown. You can't escape that. See, because of that unknown, everyone is staying on this side of the tunnel, right? Like your book says. We're staying on this side because we don't see the light. Because it's too dark. Where we are, it's too dark to enter the tunnel. Right? So you and I are teaching women, yes, it is dark because it's a new place. But we are examples that come a little bit more.
Yes.
And so many of us have done it, and we've all been better for it. I have never met a woman who regrets being divorced.
Yeah, I interview people on my podcast, the Divorce Doctor podcast, every week, and they all say, two things. One is there are things my life is different because of the divorce. I'm grateful for it. And if I could go back, I would tell my old self exactly what you said, Shefali, that you can do this, that this will change, that that the only way through is through. And this is the problem. We hate pain. We hate feeling uncomfortable. We hate feeling the unknown, but that is the only way to have pure freedom, is to dip into that discomfort, to allow the pain with a lot of support and structure, but not to be so afraid of it. Every time you're afraid, you move back so much further.
Well, you know, we especially women are not supposed to put ourselves first, not break up the
Yeah.
family, not hurt our children. So we are severely compromised, and then we're taught to beg for love. So we are taught to compromise and sacrifice. You know, so the longevity model, as I call it, of marriage is not a growth model of marriage. So we have been taught, stick it out, stay, compromise, sacrifice. So we're very afraid of this new idea of placing our needs first. And we don't realize, if it's not working out, if it's such a struggle, if every day you're explaining and breaking down the language, no, I meant this, no, what did you mean? That's not flow. And we have a right to flow. We don't have to break our jaw explaining what we mean every day of our life. We don't have to tiptoe in fear. We don't have to hide ourselves. See, we didn't know that in our 20s, that our mothers never told us, look, if you find yourself tiptoeing, if you find yourself lying, if you find yourself hiding, if you find yourself faking, if you find yourself scared of conflict, get out. You don't have to endure this. This is not a partnership. This is slavery. So we weren't taught that. And hopefully we can teach our daughters going forward. You know, life is meant to be flow. And sure, you had a marriage, you had a party, big deal. Okay. That doesn't hold you indebted for the rest of your life. You're allowed to try. You're allowed to move. You're allowed to.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder, Shefali, if you had this, and I'm sure lots of the people who are part of your audience, you know, when you're a psychologist or a conscious person, you know, you can see all the reasons that someone is doing something. And sometimes that you can think, oh, well, I understand why he's this way, or I see, you know, he's had this childhood experience and that's why he, you know, can't show his love. Doesn't matter. You deserve to have someone fully show up for you. I don't give a shit why they're doing that. I hope they get some help with that.
This is where we get messed up. If we're women, and if we're therapists kind of women, we're always like, let's understand the why. Let's understand the why. So we confuse the why, which should have compassion, with the behavior. And only when I separated the behavior, like the behavior is still not okay, then I said, I made myself promise, stop asking why. It doesn't matter why. Like you just said, I don't give a shit. But we're trained to have compassion for the why. That works when the other person is also deconstructing and doing the inner work. If you're the only one doing the healing work, it's not going to work. Both have to be asking why and deeply committed to inner work. Then we should ask why. But when the other is not invested in inner work and you are the only one asking why, then you're just going to be enabling the negative pattern.
Exactly.
That takes a long time to sink in. Like,
really,
I'm enabling.
Oh, it's so hard. I remember, Shefali. So in my situation, my ex-husband is a recovering alcoholic, and I sent him to, you know, the best psychiatrist, the best psychologist. I could present a case conference on him, right? Like I knew his whole story. And my favorite point where I really thought I cannot change this is when he went to the top psychiatrist in New York City, and he came home. He said, that was great. It was a great session. And I said, oh, really? What was great about it? And he said, I don't have a drinking problem. And I realized in that moment that, you know, that's what he heard and that's what he wanted. He was always going to hear what he wanted to hear. I could put out the red carpet. I could show a PowerPoint presentation. He was not going to know when it was time for him until he knew. So all of you amazing people out there who know why your partner is acting all these ways, it doesn't matter unless they have the PowerPoint.
Right. And you could know everything. It's because, you know, your mother said this at 2, and because your father abandoned you and you don't feel good enough, and your dog and your twin. It doesn't matter. They have to say that to you. And, you know, because we're therapists, see, we fill in the blanks. We're like, I know why you're acting this way. So we think just because we know, they know. No, there's no psychic transference of information, right?
No.
The other person has to know it, believe it, work on their own stuff. This is
Yeah.
where we extra empathic women enable, because we take over the healing process and we're like,
Hmm.
I got it. You need to act like this is what you need to do. Let me draw out your whole childhood. And they're just passive, and the pattern continues,
Yes.
so it takes a lot for us to realize, oh, we've been the only one talking all this time.
It's
we're,
so hard.
we're the
Right.
only ones doing the research and highlighting all the books. Did you
Yes.
highlight books? And I used to highlight
Oh, yeah.
everything. Here, read. And I'm like, what am I doing?
Oh,
But it
yeah.
took me decades because I was an incurable savior, right? So,
Hmm.
my cobbler doesn't have shoes was that I wanted to save my own relationship, but you can't
Yeah.
save people. And
Yeah.
that the thing I had to save was my own addiction to my own savior.
Absolutely. And I think that's so well said. I think I was addicted to being a savior as well. And I also think I mistook saviorism for intimacy. I
Yes.
felt like if I knew his intricacies, again, that somehow that made us closer. We were so distant. He was checked out. And so I think that was a moment of one of the biggest moments when I was recovering from this martyrdom, was realizing that here I was thinking, I loved being, as you said earlier, better than him, like knowing what all his problems were. And I never was sharing my own problems with him or with
But we don't
anybody.
have any problems.
Exactly. Our only problem is them.
so this is where it gets really deep, right? The true awakening is when we realize our bullshit. So we attract people who are broken, then we want to fix them, then we're upset that we don't get any time and attention, and you're like, he's unavailable. He was always unavailable. What were you thinking, right? You were so
Right.
excited, you had so much material and data to work on, and that kept you busy for a long time, and then you're like, hey, it's only one way. It was always one way. So here's where we need to take responsibility as women. And
Hmm.
that's what I'm going to talk about in my book now. That's what my
Yay.
book talks about, a radical awakening. But this is about you, not about me. That we women need to notice our patterns and see how we have enabled the dysfunction. So once we see that, if we're really grown up, where's the resentment, right?
Right. Right. We
Technically, we
just
can't be
release it.
resentful.
Exactly.
We've used them too.
Well, that is something that I have had to say to him, which is to apologize for
I don't know.
enabling. So you haven't done that.
I don't know
I've had
what
a
I
few
can
more
do.
years. I've had a few more years. But I started with, actually, just so you know, I started with a little easier, like my high school boyfriend, right? I started with because I've been doing this behavior a long time. So I started apologizing to smaller bits, like in a hierarchy of exposure. But I said, I didn't really allow you to be who you wanted to be. I kept coming in and telling you to be different. And the truth is, I married him hoping I would change him,
Me
which is a
too.
terrible way to be. I mean,
Terrible.
imagine if you married someone who
Terrible.
wanted to change you.
We're
Like,
totally fake and fraud. We're like, I am marrying you because I have a project. Two decades project. I'll be busy a lot.
right. And how
Because
dare you not have said,
our sickness is to be the good one, to
yeah,
be the lovely one, to be the rescuer. That's our sickness.
I know.
Then we
And you know
blame
what?
them. Then we blame them for wanting to be rescued.
Exactly. And it doesn't last. I mean, it just doesn't last. It's a drug, as you know, it's a little bit of a high, and then it feels terrible because no one ever says, "Thank you so much for trying to change my life." Like, I don't know what I wanted him to thank me for, but I wanted him to thank me. I didn't want him to succeed and thrive. And that
No,
and
and
that was my responsibility.
the funny thing is that they get so angry. You're like, "But I'm only trying to help," because we're
Oh
full
yeah.
of shit. Because we're full of
Oh,
shit too. Because who wants to be changed, right?
right.
We don't fully accept the other when we start this, because we are in our own martyrdom and addiction of pleasing and rescuing. So we're
Yes.
not truly in love either, and
Yeah.
they're not truly in love either, because they're waiting to be fixed and managed to feel bad about themselves. We help them feel bad about themselves, and then they're angry with that, which is natural. And then we're like, why are you angry with me? I'm only trying to
Exactly.
I'm only trying to help. We don't own how in our saviorship we make the other person feel so crappy.
That's right. And we don't realize how bad it actually is to be a savior. Like, only when you're out of it do you realize, oh, that was terrible for me too. It wasn't, it stopped being fun a long time
Yeah,
ago.
it's exhausting. You reach burnout. You're angry all the time. I used to clench my jaw all the time. I'm like, why am I clenched? I should just be so angry
Oh.
because our saviorship is also our fake persona. It's not our true self. It's our needy self.
I remember walking around in New York City like a zombie, honestly. I felt like I had this outward persona of so sweet and so generous, and I said I was full of rage and resentment and full of shame. I also had a lot of shame because I thought that his bad behavior was my fault because I was in that, why didn't
With
I
shame, you couldn't fix it.
yeah, I was ashamed, as if somehow it was my job to, I mean, when I hear myself say that, I mean, I really thought it was my job to shift this 30 something year old man. I mean, someone who was a person. I was treating him like a piece of clay.
We, yeah, we just, we need your book. So can you show us your book again, please?
Yes. So
So
light at the
buy
end of
this
the
book, Woman and Man, Light at the Other Side of Divorce. Elizabeth, I could talk to you forever. We should do
I
this
know.
for women because all the women are versions of us, and we've been all women.
Right.
And I think candid, powerful women like us who can talk about our sicknesses and our idiocies and our vulnerabilities will help other women to see their patterns and to cut out their own dysfunctional, disruptive, toxic elements in their lives because we have our own addictions to our roles, and that's what you talk about. So I'm so excited for you. I'm so proud of you guys. Go buy the book. We're going to post the link. I'm going to post it everywhere. I'm going to send it out in my newsletter. Go get the book. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you for
Thank you.
joining me.
Oh, I could talk to you for hours. Thank you so much,
Me
Shefali.
too.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank
love.
you.
Buy the
Bye,
book. Bye,
Lovey.
guys.
Thank you.